Guitar technique fundamentals. How to finger pick the guitar. Before understanding how to finger pick the guitar, it's important to know where and what part of the arm rests on the top of the guitar. One common error that players make is resting the arm too low over the guitar. Resting the arm too low may cause a tense hand position, as extra effort is required to keep the hand elevated so it doesn't touch the guitar strings while playing. This further can restrict the ability to pluck the guitar strings in other areas to produce different tones. Having the arm too low can also force the wrist to bend too much to accommodate the hand and fingers from being out of position, resulting in a weak plucking action. It should be realized that the arm acts as a weight on top to keep the guitar more secure while preventing the guitar neck from falling too low. This allows the fretting arm to maintain good technique while fretting. Adopting a good plucking arm positioning should allow the guitar to stay in a secure position without the assistance of the fretting arm to support the neck. The most ideal place to rest your arm is about the midpoint of the forearm, on the highest point of the guitar body in line with the bridge. The correct forearm placement will ensure the neck of the guitar is raised at the correct angle while keeping the guitar secure. The forearm should also be in a position to reflect an even shoulder posture. If you feel your shoulders are too tense, try lowering the body of the guitar further while raising the neck higher, till your shoulders feel relaxed. The player should always be aware if the forearm moves out of position. If any displacement occurs, it's important to stop playing and readjust to the correct position again. Once the forearm feels secure on top of the guitar, the hand is ready to position itself to pluck the strings. Move all your fingers towards the strings over the sound hole. Once the fingers are above the strings, rest the thumb on the 6th string, the index finger on the 3rd string, the middle finger on the 2nd string and ring finger on the 1st string to position the hand. The space between the palm of the hand and strings of the guitar should be parallel. Avoid moving the hand too much in one direction. The fingers should touch the strings with each joint bent and relaxed. The thumb should be straight while resting on the 6th string. Once the hand is in position, gently release the thumb and let them hover above the strings ready for action. When considering a correct finger-picking action, they should work independently while the hand remains steady as possible. Isolating the fingers promotes better preparation for a plucking action of the strings. However, in the early stages it's important not to embrace bad habits when it comes to stabilizing a correct hand position. This can be a result of too much tension in the fingers. If tension starts to develop throughout the fingers, one mistake some players adopt is to rest or anchor one or more fingers on the face of the guitar to stabilize the hand to keep the fingers more steady. The contact of the finger and soundboard in an anchored position will restrict a complete fluid action for the other fingers. Some consideration of anchored fingers can be made when using a flat pick, because the other fingers aren't usually required. But when referring to correct finger-picking technique, any use of an anchored finger should always be avoided. This also includes resting fingers on other strings while a particular finger is in action. If the player needs to stabilize the hand, one exception can be resting the thumb on the 6th string. However, it should only be encouraged at the beginning phase of learning guitar. Other problems that can lead to tension in the fingers and unsteady hand positions is by using too much flesh of the finger to pluck the strings. Using too much flesh can result in an excessive amount of force, producing a heavy twang-like tone. The brief moment of using too much flesh of the finger and string will take more time and effort for the finger to follow through the string, creating a slower action for the following strokes. The ideal contact for the finger and string is made through the very fingertip, or if playing with long nails, the point of where the nail and flesh of the fingers converge. Plucking with too much flesh can also result in a tense hand position, causing the wrist of the hand to collapse inwards and rest on the soundboard of the guitar, restricting any fluid movement of the thumb and fingers. Before a follow-through action of a finger is executed, it should always be above the string it's about to pluck as quickly as possible after each stroke. The direction of the follow-through action should always point towards the base of the hand. The plucking action of a finger should reflect a minimal downward movement from the top knuckle and middle joint, followed through by the last joint of the finger using a bent and rigid circular motion. When the strings are plucked correctly, the fingertips should follow through the strings smoothly and quickly, giving them enough time to return back into a ready position. The hand should move very little, as all the force should be felt through the fingertips and strings. Special consideration must be given to the wrist position. The player should always make the effort to keep the wrist straight as possible while fingerpicking, as fingers move most efficiently with a straighter wrist. Some players might bend their wrist too much in an outward direction when plucking the strings. This is done to compensate the wrist from collapsing inwards from built-up tension. It will be evident that bending the wrist too much will cause the fingers to feel weaker and slower. Bending the wrist too much can also affect the relationship and position of where the index finger and thumb should be. As the wrist bends outwards, the tip of the thumb moves closer to the index finger, which ultimately impedes a follow-through action of both fingers. When considering the plucking action of the thumb, it functions in a slightly different manner from the fingers. The thumb should remain straight at all times, plucking more parallel to the strings. The thumb plucks with the outer edge tip but positioned further in front of the fingers, but like the fingers it uses a circular motion to follow through the strings. Although, various physical differences can exist with thumb genetics, as some thumbs are straighter than others, the thumb still must follow the same methodology to pluck the strings as discussed earlier. The type of plucking action used to pluck the string influences how tone quality is produced. Considering types of plucking action on guitar falls into two categories, which are free stroke, the picking technique discussed so far. The other technique is rest stroke. When referring to rest stroke, the plucking action involves the thumb and fingers to follow through the string using a downward pressure to briefly rests on the neighboring string below or above before moving back into position. Unlike free stroke, where the follow-through action of the string requires all joints of the finger to remain bent and rigid. Rest stroke requires that the fingertip joint relaxes to a collapsed position as it follows through the string. Rest stroke is a preferred plucking action used to define musical phrases with more expression. When fingerpicking a musical phrase, specific plucking combinations will be used depending on what strings are played. When playing more than one note on the same or other strings, it's always good practice to pluck the strings with alternating fingers. The importance of finger alternation could be visualized as being the same as a person walking down a street. It would make more sense to interchange between left and right feet instead of hopping with one foot. The index and middle fingers labeled as I and M tend to be the main fingers used for an alternating picking action, especially when playing scale-like passages, as the tonal balance and coordination is usually strongest with those two fingers. The thumb labeled as P is usually allocated for the three bass strings on guitar and is frequently used as support with an alternation of the other fingers. The ring finger labeled as A is the weaker finger and works well as support with arpeggiated strings. Many classical guitar players prefer using nylon string guitars and like to grow their nails longer on the plucking hand, as it tends to give the player more dexterity with the fingers while allowing more ways to manipulate guitar tone. It is usually up to personal preference as to what length the nails grow or the ways they are filed, as various genetic nail types exist. One thing to keep in mind by having long nails is to make sure the nails don't catch on the strings. General practice for the best ways to maintain long nails is to use a file and nail buffer often. The best way to prevent the nails from catching is to make sure all corners of the nails are filed off, forming a more rounded shape. The player should file the nails from underneath the nail while looking towards the nails directly at the tip. Once the nails seem less hooked, the nails should feel more smooth when playing the guitar. I hope you liked this video on how to fingerpick the guitar. Please feel free to comment and subscribe to get more videos on guitar technique by Guitargusto.